on. Are we on? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello, I'm Rowan. I'm the lab manager for Eagle Labs in Brighton. So those who don't know, Eagle Labs, we are a national network of co-working and business incubators. So what differentiates us from any other co-working spaces that we are an incubator. So we provide a lot of support for businesses to grow. So if you've got an idea for a business, so we can grow you from an idea stage to kind of developing a business all the way through to exiting that business. So we've got lots and lots of support along that whole journey, whether that be access to mentors, opportunities for funding, accelerator programs, lots and lots of things that can just help you to kind of get an idea off the ground or kind of develop your and grow your existing business. So yeah, there's a banner here, kind of talks about some of the support and the QR code to kind of scan that to get more information, or come and talk to me to get more information. But we also, within our local regions and our local ecosystem, like to support the tech kind of ecosystem, and I'd love to hold events. So we're supporting Data Forum today and Silicon Brighton to host this event. But if you've got an event idea as well and think you might want to use this event space, then do talk to us about that as well. So yeah, I will pass you back over. Oh, what, housekeeping? Yeah, a little bit of housekeeping before I do run off. So there's some toilets downstairs to the left, and you'll see them. There's an accessible toilet just through here as well. In the case of a fire alarm, which we shouldn't have. Oh, someone at the door. I think Cameron's going to go. So in a case of a fire alarm, we just go across the road to the Joker. So don't panic and have a beer. So yeah, no, in all seriousness, it's just the meeting point is outside the Joker pub. But yeah, other than that, enjoy your evening, help yourself to a drink, and I think everyone's devoured the pizza. There might be 2 slices left, but help yourself. And I'll pass you back over to Oskar.
Thank you, Rowan. Always when he says that, I wonder how many times he's triggered the fire alarm just to get everybody to the pub with him. Well, welcome to the Brighton Data Forum. We are let me just turn off the feedback. So we are a networking, socializing, and skills sharing community of data professionals, broadly defined. We cover all aspects of the data professions, all from database administration and data engineering, analytical engineering, to data science, data governance, data visualization, data ethics, and AI. And our membership includes professionals from the executive suite to the intern. Oh, there's someone at the door. Thank you. It's Katie. And we especially welcome participation and participation from students and enthusiasts. So if that fits you at all, then you're exactly the people, you'll be in good company here. The forum's home address is on meetup.com. That's where we organize these particular events. But we also have a Slack workspace where we sort of continue the conversation in between our meetings. These meetings are every other month at the last Wednesday of the odd-numbered month, if you can remember that. But in between, we have lots of other activities and conversations that we try to keep going. So you're very welcome to join our Slack space and follow us there. Now, we are a member meetup under the Silicon Brighton umbrella, and you can see their stuff here. And here is Cameron, who's running the AV, who's beaming me onto the internet right now and recording, and he's going to tell us about Silicon Brighton. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers. My name's Cameron, as Oskar has said, and I work for Silicon Brighton. So far, that's all true. I also run the majority of our community events, and I also run the AV as well. We've got a massive event coming up called Evolve. It's going to be at the Brighton Dome on the 4th of July. We're calling it the meetup of all meetups. We've got so many of our meetup group organizers having exhibition spaces or being on panels or hosting talks. Like if you've come to any of our other events, including this one, like it's guaranteed to have something there for you. We've also got a huge discount as well, which of this code Brighton Data Forum. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to tickets. The early bird prices are, off the top of my head, is £40 for general admission, and then £12 for students, so a further 50 off of that, so tickets for like £6 or 20 quid, and then half of that money goes straight back to the Brighton Data Forum. So whether that'll be spent on pizza or meetups, who knows, but in the safe hands of Oskar and Mann, I know that they'll put it to good use. Oh yeah, thoughts of pizza got a few few extras, but there we go. Lovely, cool, thanks guys. Any more? One more? Maybe one more. Just about. Cool, that'll do. And then, yeah, so speaking of all of our meetup groups as well, we have loads of different meetups that we support, all with events just like this. They come in the forms of meetups, socials, and workshops as well. So they're all free to attend, and they're all massively inclusive. So we're really proud of all the meetups that we support. Onto our supporters as well, all growing and well-established local businesses that support and fund the work that we do. They're all brilliant, and we really appreciate what they do. They assist in all of the live streaming funding as well. So we really appreciate accessibility that they offer us. A huge shout out to James Chase as well, who is the first of our 3 sponsors. All of our sponsors just continuously fund the work that we do, and we're really, really grateful to all of them. And then I don't know who's next, but it's not me.
I'll take over. Thank you. Thank you for that, Cam. So, stagecraft. Yeah, thank you for that, Cam. And I also wanted to remind everybody that the Earl conference is mid-October. Our friends at Data Cove are putting this show up. This is a venerable London-based conference that we're hosting here, that they are hosting here in Brighton for the 2nd year in a row. And keynote speaker this year, they include no less celebrities than Wes McKinney of Python Pandas fame, and friend of the forum, AI artist Shardcore. Now, I just think that we're very lucky to have an event of this scale, of this magnitude, in our pretty little seaside town. It's not a given that you'd have that for a gift to the data profession. So my big congratulations to Jeremy Horn and his team at Data Cove for this scoop. Now, if you see here this code on the slide, Jeremy is offering members of the Brighton Data Forum a discount on the registration fees via this QR code and this code data 25 at checkout. So good stuff there. Take advantage. And now, over to this evening's first speaker with some news of the Brighton Data Forum. Take it away, Mark.
Right. Hi, everybody. Hi, nice to be back. So is it button? Do you press this then to move on? Yeah, okay. Okay, so thanks for inviting me back again. And yeah, so we are the new sponsor of the Data Forum. Obviously, the name will be familiar. Actually, the name will be familiar from the previous sponsor. So there's a little story there, which I'll explain to you later on as how that's happened. But yeah, so we're the new sponsor, and just going to take a few minutes just to introduce ourselves again and tell a little story about how we got to where we are. Right. Okay. So I'm Mark. I've spoken here a couple of times in the past before, and yeah, I'm really pleased to be back and as a sponsor this time. Just a few words about our company. We're a consultancy based in Brighton. I've lived in Brighton for about 40 years now. So I went to Long Hill years ago, and then Baswick and Brighton Uni. So I've been in Brighton for a long time now. And yeah, we're a consultancy based in Brighton. We work with businesses and organizations typically to kind of upskill and upscale their data analytics. Okay, so we work with technologies like DBT and Looker and Google Cloud and a bit of Oracle, but largely kind of what we call new modern data stack sort of technologies. And we have clients in the UK, in the USA, and as you said in a moment, in Brighton, actually, funny enough. So if you're interested in our company, there's the kind of link to the blog and to the kind of website there. And to our podcast, okay? But we're proud to be sort of new sponsor, and there's our kind of basic details there. So we have clients all around the world, as I said. We've got people like Ruvi, so that cycling app. We ever use that cycling app from Ruvi to sort of do cycling during the winter. We helped rebuild their data infrastructure in the past. We work with the likes of a firm called Insighter, who we've helped them build a kind of multi-tenant, multi sort of like touch marketing attribution application back in the States. But also we work with a lot of Brighton companies. So actually, you know, Oskar and I have a bit of a shared history in the past. We've worked in places before, and actually and other places we've worked at, or our companies worked at, is the likes of Into. So I don't know if you know Into in Brighton. So we're kind of their main analytics partner. We've been working with them for many years now on a variety of sort of different projects. We're doing an AI and agentic project with them now. And also Apex Auctions, they're based down in Middle Street. So I work with those. So we've got clients all around the world, but also in Brighton as well. And it's kind of important to me that we actually, you know, have local clients and so on. So, you know, lots of things on our website explain what we do and all that kind of business. Right. So I've been actually speaking, and my colleague Lewis has spoken at a few of these events, a few of the data forum events in the past. So there was Lewis was at the last one. I think he's the last person to spoke, and even I couldn't work out what he's going on about half the time. But it was pretty complicated and it was pretty clever, talking about agents and so on. So that was a good talk. There was my ChatGPT talk, which showing how fast the technology moves on. It seems like almost like an ancient, really out of date presentation now. So you know, that was about a year ago, really. That's about ChatGPT. There was also one that I did back in about 2019, which was when I think Morgan was running the forum, and that was about changes in the BI industry, which was kind of interesting. And there was actually a presentation I gave right back at the start, when back in 2018, when just after I'd become famous for kind of 48 hours, when I got in all the newspapers for trying to spoil my kettle using Telnet and stuff. And those were the days before things like Alexa and so on. So I did a presentation at that time about how Daily Mail readers really hate me, because I took all the data from the Daily Mail comments and so on, tracked it all in BigQuery, and worked out exactly the person and the place that most hated me in the world, which was this bloke in sort of Blackpool. That kind of both the sentiment and the kind of the strength of the argument were kind of, you know. So I tracked all that down, and funny enough, I presented that again about 2 or 3 weeks later in London. The Daily Mail were actually there, which is interesting. So, but anyway, so we've been long-term supporters of the data forum. So it's really good to be here. Also, we have our blog and our GitHub site and our kind of podcast, and really the kind of roots of me being in business and everything I've been doing here has all been in the community. So right back in time, about sort of 15 years ago, I had a blog, and that blog led into my first kind of consultancy, which then led into what we're doing now. And so we do things like we've run a meetup in London for Looker and all that kind of stuff. So we really kind of, the community is really important to us, and it's the roots of everything that we do. Okay, so they're all on our site at the moment. But okay, so one of the questions maybe you might be asking is, hang on a second, weren't the last sponsors of this kind of meetup called Rittman something? Okay, and how many? What's the chances of there being two businesses in Brighton, both in the data industry and both with Rittman in the name? Okay, so what's going on there? Okay, so is anybody from Rittman Analytics, Rittman May in the room at the moment? Is that of interest? No, good. Okay, if you do, you put your hand down. But yeah, so the story behind it. Okay, so why is there two companies with my name in? Am I some massive egotist, or is it kind of, or what's the kind of history there really? So okay, history here. So back in, if you're interested, back in 2007, I actually, the first iteration of what became Rittman Mead was actually Rittman Consulting. And then I met up with John, because we both worked at a place called ACG at the time in Brighton. And we made the company called Rittman Mead, okay? And we focused at that time on the Oracle space. And at that time, Oracle was the kind of big thing to be in. Actually, you know, there's still money in it now. It's like in a way, it's like the IBM of old days. If you're in the Oracle world, you know, there's money to be made and whatever, but nobody in their right mind would kind of move into that from scratch, you know. So anyway, we focused on the Oracle world at the time. And Oskar joined us at one point as well. So, and we sort of branched into things like big data, and which was that's a whole story in itself of kind of blind alleys and so on. But then in 2016, I kind of sold my half to John Mead, all kind of amicable and so on, because I wanted to change really. I'd had enough of the Oracle world. I'd had enough of basically an industry that was basically it's like you're being held upside down by a salesman and shaken, sort of thing. And we were always selling sort of technology not to the users of the software, but to to big companies, buyers, and so on. And it seemed to me like, little did I know, a racket that wouldn't last forever, but they're still going and it's still money in there and so on. But anyway, they were focusing on the Oracle world. I wanted to change. Okay, so I left there and actually went to work in London for a startup called Qubit, right, which was kind of interesting. And it was, the reason I got in there was because the guy who was heading up engineering was actually the ex-PM for Oracle BI from America. So that got me into that world of kind of like of Looker and BigQuery and startups and all that kind of world. So the day that my non-compete ended, so 2 years after I was selling my half of the company, I then started Rittman Analytics. Okay. At the time, the idea was that John was going to change the name of the company, but in the end, we agreed that he'd keep it and so on. So we had two companies called Rittman in Brighton, which was interesting, but we were very different markets, really. Our clients were different and our solutions were different and so on. So we never really kind of crossed over, and John and I kept in contact. It's all kind of amicable. So really our focus, so Rittman Analytics focus going forward has always been in kind of, I suppose, what we might call the modern data stack and the world of cloud and all this kind of stuff, really. Okay, so so we partner with actually we're still an Oracle partner, but we focus on GCP and DBT and all these kind of like sexy new technologies and so on. And so that's been our sort of strategy going forward. John and Rittman Mead kept them focused on kind of Oracle. And actually recently acquired by Pythian. Okay, so good luck. Both managed to sort of like, to be acquired. As soon as I heard that, I contacted Oskar and said, if they ever drop their sponsorship, I would come up and do it. Because and so that's why I'm here. I'm really glad to be sponsoring it. You're now with your kind of the true Rittman, really. And yeah, so thanks to John and me for all the sponsorship over the years. We're there now, and we're really glad to be sponsoring the event. And so thank you very much for letting us do that. And yeah, enjoy the pizza and beer and all that sort of thing. And it's really good to be here. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Thank you for your sponsorship and for your entertaining talk. But seriously, I mean, it's not a given, and it's not to be taken for granted that we are lucky enough to have sponsorship. Well, let alone from two Rittmans, regardless of their name, just to have companies come to us and say, "Hey, we like what you're doing. We'd like to help out. We'd like to be a part of this." And so as stewards of the forum, we are really trying to be ambitious with the forum and try to make such investment worthwhile to the community and to the companies out there. And so what is our mission statement? It is to network, to socialize, and to upskill data professionals locally. And to do that, well, what do? We run these events every other month. We plan bicycle rides and random walks and pint meetups on the Slack workspace. And we have occasional special events in between events. We've held workshops. We had a movie screening on AI, and we've organized a panel discussion on data strategies and for organizations. And now I'm very excited and glad to finally announce to you that we're adding a new activity in order to work on this upskilling element of our mission statement. So what we're doing, we are organizing a collaborative end-to-end data project with you, the membership. And to keep us at it, we have snared in stakeholders from ladies at UX. And together, we've sort of come up with a project, a goal of the project, a sort of plan to completion, and division of labor. And so that's what I want to share with you tonight. And let's start with the division of labor. We, the members of the Brighton Data Forum, we will conduct a search for relevant data, by which I mean hyperlocal data of the kind that Adam Dennett spoke about in our last event in March, and geospatial data of the kind that Sean talked about in November of last year. And then we will be building web scrapers to collect this data and set up data pipelines when possible and when necessary. We'll set up processing scripts to clean the data, ingest it into a database, and then assemble factoids from dispersed data sources together into some sensibly modeled database schema, and then analyze data there, build aggregated data sets, mine these for insights, even applying machine learning models or even applying AI agents, agent-based tools. Maybe Thomas will help us build a RAG model on top. And then we pass refined data products and isolated insights, nuggets of insight, over to the ladies at UX. And so they will take that and build and present the data story in a way that they decide is fit, whether it's infographics or a web page or interactivity or pamphlets or whatever they decide to do to tell the story. I'm excited to find out. So we discover the data insight, we pass it to the ladies at UX, and they tell the data story. Now, it's drawn here as a linear process, but everybody here who has experience with data projects knows that there is an iterative aspect to it. We fully expect that we'll be collecting and responding to feedback and delivering to updated requirements. Now, and it's important to note that nobody knows what the final outcome, what that final end product here is here. We are doing this effort. This is a learning exercise, in part, to find that out, to discover what the output is. Now, we can do everything we need using open source tools and free tiers access to the various technologies, Python, R, Jupyter, whatever you are comfortable working in, you're welcome to bring into this project. Yeah, I mentioned here MotherDuck, DuckDB and MotherDuck and Evidence. We can figure that out. Because when I say we, I mean myself and you. I mean this. You're invited to, you're encouraged to, you're pleaded with to join this project and help out on this path of discovery. Now, we've already made a start. See, if you hit this QR code in the corner, you will get to a code repository. We've created the code repository. We loaded a number of data files into a DuckDB database. We've coded some processing pipeline, documented some early relevant data sources. But this is just the beginning. Anyone can now clone this repo on their machine and start from there. Here's sort of the project structure so far. It's pretty much standard. You have the data directory. And one of the things it contains is a DuckDB database file, as well as folder for CSV files and Excel files, because the Office of National Statistics shares a lot of data in Excel only. And then there's a folder for collected URLs so that we can, because this is a research project, you want to be able to recreate, so you want to have your sources listed. Now, this is a GitHub repo, so you're not putting huge data files over here. The data files of interest here are modest size. We're talking hundreds or possibly thousands of rows, handful of columns. So this is, should be under 5 megabytes maybe, or anything massively bulky at the tens and hundreds of megabytes. Well, we need to store that elsewhere and put links instead. Anyway, we have an image folder for image assets and graphs and charts, notes folder for your research notes, a README for some always changing messaging about the project and its current status, a SQL folder for the SQL transformations for ingesting and transforming in the database, a source folder for scripts and codes written in R, Python, Rust, Golang, whatever you whatever you bring into it. And so this is sort of the structure of how we'll be solving the project. But I haven't told you yet what the project is. I haven't told you what we're trying to achieve here. And the question, what is the question that we'll be tackling? And I'm not going to. Fiona is. Fiona MacNeil is the chapter leader of Ladies That UX here in Brighton. And she's here to tell us why we are focusing on this particular challenge, why it's important. And yeah, so take it away, Fiona. Okay, let me see that I can. It works. Yeah, take it away.
Thank you very much for that climactic introduction, Oskar. So I'm going to tell you about what we're doing here and why we need your help. So first of all, I'm going to give you a tour of where we've got to beyond what Oskar's told you. As Oskar told you, I am representing Ladies That UX. I am the chapter leader for Ladies That UX. I prefer to say head volunteer. And we actually go by UX Brighton. We recently became a company limited by guarantee, which means everything we do goes back into operating our meetup group. And we very much are a group that not only talks the talk, but we walk the walk. And what I'll be talking about is how we do that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of context. I'm going to tell you the why of what we're doing. I'm going to run a very quick experiment with you all. And then I'm going to give you the overview of the provocation that sits behind the reason for this research Oskar has told you about. So introduction and context. So this year, very excitingly, Ladies That UX Brighton, or UX Brighton, has been nominated to run the international conference for Ladies That UX. So it's kind of like the Olympics in that this is not going to happen again for a while, hopefully, because it's a lot of work. But it is more than a conference for us. It's about a culmination of the last 3 years of working exceedingly hard to try and make sure that we look at how UX functions in the community and also how we provide meaningful skills development for up-and-coming UXers and mid-career UXers, and particularly people who are underrepresented in tech. So although ladies is in the title, we are very much more broad than that and tend to allow anyone to attend our events as long as they feel comfortable being in a space that puts the experiences of people who are underrepresented in tech at front and center. So we look at real world design challenges, and in order to do that, we had to think about like what's around us right now, what's going on, and how can we use this conference for more than just the ritual of meeting up, right? Because so often conferences, there's been some interesting dialogue on this about on LinkedIn recently, is that conferences can become quite performative, not very effective. Perhaps they're not as meaningful as they could be. So if we're really going to bring people together from all around the world and use that much carbon, how are we going to make it worth it? So we considered our purpose for this event, and we identified a challenge in our midst. And we also asked for Oskar's help. So the why. We were very inspired, having looked around, by this discussion that happened at the Brighton Chamber, who you saw on the earlier slides from Cameron, who are involved in supporting Silicon Brighton, where they talked about, is Brighton's creative sector an undervalued powerhouse? And we thought about this because as people who are running the gamut of design, so we've got UX designers, we've got content designers, we've got product managers, we've got user researchers, we've got everyone who sort of is UX adjacent. Much like Brighton Data Forum, we have quite a broad group of people who come to our events. We thought, are we part of the creative sector? Are we undervalued? Are we at risk? And then we thought, what is the creative sector anyway? And we thought, if this is true, if what they're saying in this discussion, where things are quite hard to live in Brighton, perhaps there are lots of challenges for people in creative roles. Perhaps they have more than one job. Perhaps housing is really hard to get. Are creative people leaving Brighton, was our question. And what will be the impact of that if that is the case? So let's stop and think about this for a moment. So I'm going to ask you to cast your minds back to the pandemic. I know many of us would rather not think about it, but we've got a couple of examples here. We've got the Wellerman Sea Shanty and the amazing Kifness Aluga Lug cat, which I find really hard to say. What do you think these things have in common? Any ideas? Collaboration. What's helping people to collaborate? Music, creativity. Yeah, it's a way of coming together. So when times are hard, creativity is there for us. And we've seen a recent, very clear example of that in our memory of a few years back. So it's important to support creativity. And there's a lot of research saying how much it sort of enriches our well-being as people. So coming together is an important factor of creativity. And then another thing is we've got a few kind of things happening in Brighton. So we've got Pride, we've got, this is an example of a big projection show as part of quite a few years ago at Phoenix. And then there is the seafront. So these are reasons to come to Brighton, right? But many of them, like Pride and that example, include creativity. So we've got a reason to come to Brighton because of creativity. What else is going on right now that is bringing people to Brighton? The Fringe and the festival, yep. And then we have reasons to stay in Brighton. So I was really struck by this story from Declan Cassidy, who's the CEO of Into Games, who gave me permission to use this. And he was commenting on the fact that he's lived in Brighton for 23 years and he came down here for Fatboy Slim. You know, that's the second time this week I've actually read that story on LinkedIn from someone who said they came to Brighton because of Fatboy Slim. But more poignantly, he was commenting on the fact that New England House is closing because of the unsafe cladding and other issues in the building. But I really found myself drawn to this kind of utopian vision that was New England House when it was built, this idea of a flexible space that could be used by many different businesses. And the fact that it is one building that's had sort of the patisserie in the basement that smells amazing when you walk past, small artists, manufacturers, like potters, jewelers, tech firms, all of these different businesses operating in the same building. And now that's closing. Nowhere else in the city can accommodate that kind of range of businesses and osmosis that occurred because they all lived symbiotically in that building. So staying in Brighton means having the right kind of spaces, places to work, affordable places to work, and also affordable places to live. I'd also point to some of those places being just in the fabric of the city itself. So, for example, Trafalgar Lane, also known as Grafalgar Lane, is a place where street artists are constantly plying their trade. That becomes the fabric of our city. It impacts how we think as people who are involved in a range of technical roles. You know, we are going to be more creative in what we do because this surrounds us. It is going to make us better at what we do. So what makes the fabric of this city? What is the one thing in common with all of these examples I've shown you? What do you think? Who makes all of this? Yeah, the people. So the thing I find interesting is I took this picture at Earl last year, just to do another reference of Earl. And we went up the I-360. And what I thought is like, okay, this city could have been built by anybody, but the choice to paint a mural that only people would see from the I-360 was a human decision. And that's an important decision because that's about the fabric of the city and what makes up this city. So I'm going to run a little experiment with you right now, which is our way of doing data viz in Ladies at UX. Although I have to say, I'm a huge fan of actual data viz and do tons of stuff are, which is part of the reason why I wanted to collaborate with Oskar. But I'd like to ask you, do you know anyone who works in a creative job? And I'm going to start this off because I know someone in the room who works in a creative job. Cameron works in a creative job, don't you, Cameron? Ooh.
I do, yes.
There you go. So what?
Oh, I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, I've already done it. There we go.
That's okay.
Cool.
So if you hold on to that. So does anyone else in the room know someone who works in a creative job? Yes. Here's some examples.
Oh,
Yep.
over to Oskar. Oh,
Over
so
to
I hold on.
You hold on, and then did you pass it? Cool.
I wanted to be early on because somebody else was going to say.
Does anyone else? Yeah, who do you know? Like, what kind of job? Okay, Shardcore. Yep, brilliant example. Anyone else know someone? You keep hold of a bit as well, Oskar, before you make sure you don't. There's some examples of creative jobs on that. Yes. What kind of job? Sound engineer. Great. Anyone else? Yeah. If you could pass it, if you would be kind enough to pass it to the other person as well. It doesn't always fly when you want it to. Yeah. What does the person do that you know? Oh, very good choice. Very good. Anyone else? Yep. Artist and Ash? Animator. Great. Anyone else? Oh, very good. Yep. And artist. Yep. And that's a good point. Multiple hats. This is a hallmark of people in creative roles. Yeah, Rowan. Photographer. Fantastic. Anyone else? Oh, we've got some more hands up. Poets and artists, brilliant, yeah. We might run out of will at this rate. Fantastic, yeah. Fantastic. Anyone else? Any final? So, oh, games designer. Okay, maybe it'll stretch just over to you, but yeah, games designer definitely counts as well. So we definitely need some kind of picture of this. I think you've got it on the camera, haven't you? Yeah, fantastic. So think about all of these creative people. They're like a gossamer who connects us together in this city. So they are really important. And according to the stats I was reading in a paper from the University of Sussex, about 10% of us in Brighton are involved in creative roles or make some portion of our income from creative jobs. And so we were actually quite, not only beyond the tourism aspect of the pandemic, but also the fact that all of that stuff sort of ended, like performing and art galleries and other venues all closed during the pandemic, disproportionately affected as a place by the pandemic for that reason. And due to precarious employment, it's hard to know the exact figures because many people have multiple jobs, so they might be counted for one job but not the other. And many people are freelance and have multiple side hustles. So this is where we get to the provocation. Are creative people leaving Brighton is the question we have, because we couldn't find a lot of evidence necessarily backing up this finding, or this I wouldn't say it's a finding, this discussion that happened. And one of the greatest barriers for creative people working in Brighton is my first research question. So I've got two research questions. It's all deceptively simple. So we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges: affordable spaces, supportive infrastructure. So what I mean by that is like places to show your work if you're an artist, places that provide recording studios, places that provide rehearsal spaces, places that are affordable for all of those things. Routes to audiences. So routes to audience for an artist is an art gallery or some kind of event like the artist street crawl, for example, or the art crawl. Part-time job opportunities that are actually sustainable and supportive and reliable is quite a difficult thing. And are there external factors? So I would like to understand if, say, for example, photographers are being disproportionately affected in Brighton by AI photo generation. And then provocation part 2 is, what are the greatest barriers for creative people living in Brighton? So what are the factors impacting their ability to stay in Brighton? And that could be things like cost of living, the aging housing stock, and also inequality in affordable areas. So the Hutton Trust had a really interesting interactive infographic that I think came out last week, where it shows that you would think that Brighton is quite an affluent place, but when you look at the hyperlocal data, actually Hove and Port Slade are far more affluent than Brighton. And then when you get into White Hawk area, it's actually quite low on the kind of socioeconomic scale. So it's understanding, you know, if you are working here as someone who's on a lower income that's perhaps less secure, such as people who are working in creative industries, are you going to find yourself living in a place that is not secure, that is perhaps have higher crime rates, like schools that aren't as good? What are the reasons why you might leave, essentially? So Oscar's done a really good job of explaining how you can take part. The reason why we want to do this, as I say, is because it will actively feed into our conference. And it's not just about our conference, it's about after our conference as well. So our conference is about kicking off to really look at design interventions to help with some of these issues. We are about, as I said, walking the walk, and we practically have been doing work in the precursor to the conference to connect with artists, to find out about the challenges they're facing, and to make new relationships with other local groups. We are UXers. UXers are connectors, and this is what we plan to do with the amazing data that you'll help us collect, but we can't do it on our own. We will need to have data in order to visualize it and tell a story, and thus far we have found some things, but not enough. We need your help. So if you can help us better understand this problem and make the invisible visible, it would mean the world to us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Fiona. And no sudden moves. Somebody's going to get tripped over. Yeah. Yeah. So again, this project is something new. We haven't done this at the forum before. It's an experiment. So the outcome is, by definition, unknown and not guaranteed. But what is guaranteed is that all the participants will learn something in this process. And I would hope that as many of you as possible would benefit from that and join us on this to receive these valuable lessons. Now, so let me just ask you out there, do you know how to use the relevant technologies? Or if not, would you like to? I mean, have you never built a web scraper for official data? But would you think that that might be a useful skill to have? Well, then come on in. Let's figure it out together. Or if you have a strong opinion on how to model disparate data sets, well, then come on in, and we're all ears. Or if you have a hidden talent for writing documentation, boy, you will be so popular. You will, or you have a favorite method, technology, code, or trick that you love crowing about. We're all ears. So, yeah, this is a chance for both experienced and talented data professionals as well as beginners to learn something new, to work together, and to build up some portfolio. And I'll guarantee that one thing is guaranteed, that without somebody stepping up, nothing will happen. So that's my plea to you. And while you contemplate that, Thomas, our next talk is a tutorial on retrieval augmented generation, which might be useful.
Tutorial is a strong word. 25 minutes, we'll be covering the basics. That's about it. So yeah, Thomas Mann, AI engineer, well, do a bit of other stuff as well. I'm representing my company, Inspired Thinking Group, up in London, the city. So don't ask me embarrassing questions, and I will not be revealing trade secrets. Okay, and today we'll be covering RAG, right? It's a technical term, so please bear with me. Let's take it slow. I'll say things very slowly so everyone can pick it up. Okay? Rags to riches, very funny. First steps for AI in enterprise. So also wanted to include some of my thoughts in terms of what I've been seeing of how actual businesses are picking up AI. So it's not just about giving everyone ChatGPT and say, you're now now you can do 10 times as much work, right? It's about using specific techniques as well as giving everyone a ChatGPT license, right? So we'll be covering some terms, okay, before we start. Feel free to take a picture or just try to remember. The big ones would be something like AI model, right? So let's do a show of hands. Who has used ChatGPT before? Everyone, I hope so. Yeah, good. Right? So AI model is what's sitting behind it. Okay, you can swap them out. You can use different ones. So hopefully that makes sense. And then we have databases where data is stored, pipelines, a sequence of steps, evaluations is how you test AI, for example. So, you know, that's very important. I'll keep talking about it. And then we have such things as token. So token is how we split words when we are working with AI. And roughly one word is 1.3 tokens, just so you're aware. Context window is how much you can fit into a model before it bursts. Embeddings is converting words into a numerical representation. And BM25, it stands for best matching. And essentially, it's an algorithm. That's all you need to know. It retrieves the most relevant ones. Hopefully, that makes sense. Now we can start. Okay. What is RAG? Why should you care? Let's imagine a scenario. Okay. You have like hundreds of documents, like that guy there, and you're trying to retrieve a piece of information. So let's say it could be hundreds of different sources if you're writing an essay. It could be your meeting notes. It could be anything you can think of. Books, PDFs, that are not covered by internal knowledge of AI models. Okay, so imagine a time you ask ChatGPT something, it splurts out a bunch of bullshit, like, and you think, that's not right. That's one of those scenarios that we'll be covering. Okay, so option number one is you go document by document, you read through it, and you try to find the most relevant information. That's going to take you years, right? Option two is what we just talked about, is we go to an AI model and we see if it knows anything about what you just talked about, right? So, you know, if it happened before 2015, 2014, it might know it, right? But it won't know about your internal company documents, okay? It won't know anything about the most recent book or film released unless you specify it, yeah? So that leaves us with option three, where I'm kind of trying to steer the conversation, is a RAG system. A RAG system sits on top of AI, right? And lets you provide it additional documents, additional text, videos, whatever you want, right? So that's what we're covering. For a bit of background, so when companies are talking about AI adoption, right, and it's such a hot topic thing now, especially 3 years after ChatGPT released, everyone kind of is picking up on it. All the senior people are now saying, we need AI right now. Otherwise, you know, there'll be somebody who will just outcompete us. That's one of the first steps that we do, right, is a RAG system, just as a proof of concept. Okay. And so this little illustration here will support some of my next statements. So you could just shove everything into ChatGPT and then ask it questions, right? But you don't want to do that, right? And two reasons. First is cost, and second is reliability, right? Because they both suffer if you try to do that. Cost is because if you try to shove an entire War and Peace into a model, it has to read all of it. And you get billed for, let's say, every 1,000 words, right? So it's going to be a couple £100 maybe if you do it for a long period of time. And models with smaller context windows will simply not be able to fit it all in. To relate this to your personal experiences, you must have had a conversation with ChatGPT for long enough that it lost the plot. Yeah, if you keep uploading stuff to it, if you keep talking to it, it will start forgetting what was said at the start, and past a certain point, it will simply not fit into it. Okay, so that's the kind of links to the second point of reliability. That you can't really be sure where this information comes from if you just keep shoving stuff in. And yeah, the demonstration is the GPT-4o model, which is like what's behind ChatGPT, and some of the other models like Gemini 2.5, just to give you an illustration of the differences between them. Okay. So here's the kind of big picture overview with some steps simplified. So in blue, we have retrieval augmented generation. That's what it stands for. And in the gray boxes, which are actually blurred out, interesting, we have the input and output, essentially. But you can replace it with anything. Okay. It could be that you're asking it a question about the recent essay you wrote or about a book that you want to find out about. And the output will be a synthesized output by an AI model, which produces you an answer, right? So in the retrieval step, we are fetching only the relevant pieces of information from a special place called knowledge base or a vector store, vector database. Okay, I'll be going into more detail later. And then augmentation is combining the two. And finally, generation is that once you've collected those pieces of information, you're giving it back to the model, and you finally produce an answer using that retrieved piece of information. Okay. There's a couple of additional steps and thinking that you should be doing if you're going to be productionizing the system. If you're going to be working with clients or internally, and you want to make it a reliable system, and also, for example, allow for ingestion of additional documents, right? So that's what the red Mario pipeline is indicating. A bunch of PDFs go into the knowledge base, and then the blue pipeline retrieves it. You combine that information, and the green pipeline is the actual generation response. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So what the pipelines represent are multiple steps that you should be thinking about, right? So what the red one allows you to do is, let's say you keep producing more PDFs or more documents or more essays, or you keep adding more books. You'll be reusing the red pipeline to keep adding files into it. And the blue pipeline simply outlines what's the mechanism for picking out those documents, right? Green pipeline simply for producing a final answer. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the red pipeline, which is the ingestion, right? It's all about taking those PDFs that you like very much and converting them into a vector format, right? Which is one of the formats that you can choose, but we'll just choose it. Okay, don't worry about the little image. On the next slide, we'll be able to see it in higher resolution. So let's take our favorite book, right? We're going to be splitting it into chunks that make sense on their own. Then, so extract the text, chunk it, generate embeddings, and load into the vector database. And embeddings is the process of taking words and converting them into numbers, because AI doesn't speak in words, it speaks in numbers. Confusingly, it can't do math, but that's a separate thing. So what you end up with is a vector store, right? And in the vector store, if I just come here, right? We have all these different dots, right? And just for this presentation, we can think about that each dot represents a concept, right? And let's say cat and dog will be closer to one place, whereas Google and Apple will be closer to the other side, right? Dog and banana are completely separate things, right? So if you talk about dogs, you can retrieve information which is similar to cats, and etc. Up here, that's a snippet of what it looks like. Dimensions is a confusing word because we can only think in 3. So 300 means just, you can think of it as columns in an Excel, where for each term you have 300 columns, and it's a combination of those numbers that represent it. So let's say cat will be something like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and apple will be minus 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, etc. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, the way that how we calculate it is by calculating the angle between those two. Okay. So that's the retrieval process. Okay. Once we have found what we're looking for, once we have ingested all the data and it's sitting there, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay. That's when, oh, you might not be able to see the text actually. Hang on. Once the data is sitting there and it's all fine, that's when we can start thinking about actually retrieving it, right? We only want the most relevant parts from the store here, right? So if, for example, if we're talking about animals, we only want animal-related topics to be retrieved. Okay. So how do we retrieve it? Let's say you ask it about cats. We need to convert the question into numerical representations. And then once we have both your question and all the data represented as numbers, we find the most similar aspects. Yeah. So the point is to find what's semantically relevant, not just we're looking for the same word to appear, right? What this system allows us to do is find synonyms, for example, right? Pick up on linguistical nuances, right? So it's a step above of the older mechanisms that we've had. Let's say we just want to retrieve the top 5, and finally evaluation, right? Evaluation should happen at the end of each step, where we want to check whether what we've done is relevant to what we want it to be. Okay, and there's a couple of ways of doing it, which I'll go over later. So the pipeline here signifies that if we ask, what does this book say about RAG? Or a question about your favorite character in a book, what you'll be retrieving are specific passages relevant to it, but nothing else. Because you don't want to be receiving a bunch of rubbish in the pipeline as well. Okay. Once we have the retrieved data, we combine it with the original question that we've asked. We simply shove it into the model and say, hey, please combine this two and make a more educated guess about what you'll be talking about. Okay, and finally, we evaluate the relevance of the answer. Is the final answer relevant to what we asked before? Okay, as all of you might know, biggest problem with AI and adoption, apart from security and etc., is reliability. Can we trust what it outputs, right? This is a very meticulous and scientific approach of going step by step and finding out, is this relevant? Is this not relevant? If not, we need to change something. Okay, so the answer is, something like RAG is a great tool for bringing reliability and cost savings to AI with a reference, right? This reference is what makes all the difference. Unless there's a reference, I don't believe it. You could have just used your pre-training knowledge and came up with that. So yeah, evaluations. Not the sexiest topic, but they kind of correspond color-wise, but not really. So at the end of each step, apart from this, let's start with this one. At the end of each step, we want to see whether the data retrieved is what we asked for, and whether the final answer answers the original question. That's the basics of it. If anyone is interested, I would highly suggest looking into the kind of metrics that I used for this sort of stuff. It's actually quite a few ways of going about it. There's an interesting one called using AI as a judge, is when you use another model to judge the outputs of this model, but human evaluation is also very important. Okay. And finally, a couple of advanced techniques that we've been using at ITG, which could make all the difference between bringing the system from 70% accuracy to 95%. Because nobody cares about how good your system is unless it's good as a human, right? You're not going to be replacing people or making that big of a change unless it's at 95%. And there's like dozens of techniques that you use to make that little change, right? So these are the three broad categories that we're talking about. Yeah, lots of stuff to go through. Don't have time, don't want to. I'll just show you some examples. Hopefully everyone can see. And if anyone knows who Anthropic is, they're people behind Claude. And what this diagram shows you is that you can keep adding these steps and these pipelines to improve the end result. Okay. One we're using right now is called contextual retrieval, which means you describe the information being fed through the red pipeline and providing a bit of background of what this actually is. Because like an intern or like a literal child, AI doesn't know what this information is unless you explicitly tell it what it is and what's the context. And there's some advanced techniques like, re-ranker, where you sort out the results from most important to least important. Okay, plenty of techniques. If anyone is interested, highly suggest looking into it. So, and this is an example of sort of Anthropic's research, is that these changes bring the error rate from 5.7 to, let's say, 3.7 and all the way to 1.9. 1.9 is quite acceptable, because think about how often you mess up and retrieving the right document. If AI can do 1.9, can you do better than that? So, AI models only get better and better. If we drive that number to 1%, yeah, who knows what happens. So yeah, just a bit of background, why you would bother with these advanced techniques. And a little bit about the future. The future is agentic, right? If anyone is in the tech space, you probably get drilled on LinkedIn about agents. Yeah. So what an agent is, essentially, is a AI model which can interact with the environment that it's in, right? Whether it's send an email, retrieve this information, retrieve this data, do something else, drive a car, whatever. Okay? And where RAG sits is that it simply becomes a tool for the AI agent to retrieve the most relevant information. So that's kind of what the future will be, I think. But yeah, maybe I'll do a talk about agents one day. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks for listening.
Does anybody have a question for Thomas? And let me remind the remote audience to start typing your questions if you have them, and we'll get back to you afterward. So here's Andrew.
Hi, thanks very much for the talk. Very interesting. And I've done a bit of work with RAGs. Chunking, which is the dividing up of the text when you put it in. What's your experience with that? Because mine ranges from terrible to really good, depending on the algorithm, and it seems pretty critical, but it's not often emphasized.
Good question. So chunking depends what you're chunking, right? If it's a book, let's say the reason I was the one I was going through my head when I was practicing is, let's say, Harry Potter, right? And you can split it by paragraph or by what's it called, chapter, or you can split it by a whole book, right? So it's about picking the right dimension that you want to be fetching, right? There's a couple of techniques where you overlap the chunks themselves so that nothing gets missed out completely. So let's say you only take, on average, about 500 tokens, which is about 400 words. So you'll be taking 400 words at a time, plus minus 100 on each side. So hopefully you don't avoid any information, right? But then if you move into, you can also do it by like sentence ends, but it's all experimental, right? You try something out, you see if it doesn't. What we do is PDFs and PowerPoints. So for us, it's also about you need to extract the image, and you can either do that separately or you do that all together, where you describe the image and then you embed it, or you actually, yeah, that's the method we're using, right? Is you take the image, describe it, and then embed it together with everything else. Am I going in the right direction? Yeah. So yeah, and then there's like, tabular data, which there's lots of different ways of going about it. But yeah, if you ever use LangChain, they offer a bunch of different ones. Like I can't remember what the exact name is, but it's all experimental. And but it comes down always to evaluations, right? You run it, you change the chunking, you run it again, you see if your results have improved or not. You kind of vibe check it, you see if it made a difference, you try again. So yeah, that's my answer.
1 second. Go for it, Keith.
Thank you, Oskar. Thank you. So, not really a data person, to be honest, but I've thought of the LLM as being the vector database. But essentially, this RAG component is also building your own vector database of your own internal data. So you're then essentially ending up with the model's pre-learned vectors and then your vectors as well. Is that correct? So if you go forwards a slide or two, I think, and you've got the other forwards, backwards, forwards.
Yeah. This?
Yeah, that one
Before?
on the one where it's bringing together what's in our there.
Yeah.
So the augmentation piece,
right?
We're bringing in the models LLM on the right hand side there, and our vectors, but that's two lots of vectors coming together, is it?
Hang on. Right. This is an LLM, so OpenAI's ChatGPT-4. I haven't specified, which I completely forgot about. This stuff is done by special embedding models, right? So it's especially models which are trained to do this, right?
And then that
so this is done with a special model which just does that. And they're all different. So you can either do it through an API or download a local one. And how they're different is the number of dimensions they generate. So generally, the more dimensions you do, the more descriptive you can be about what it is that you're describing, right? Because if you have just 2 dimensions, that's quite limiting. But if you have 1,200, there's a lot more nuances. You can do like, this kind of dog, that kind of dog, that kind of dog, and they'll be slightly different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the bit I'm driving at is I don't quite get where the LLM itself is then, because I thought that was a vector database. If that
no. Vector database is just like a SQL database sort of thing, but it's a special type of database. It just stores information. LLM is just an API most of the time.
So that's the algorithms for searching your vectors.
No,
because that's the retrieval.
No. You retrieve the information by embedding the question and then finding cosine similarity, which is what is the most similar thing out of the Harry Potter book to the relevant question, right? Who is the main villain? It will find passages about Voldemort, his birth, and I don't know, his death, right? It'll only retrieve those, but that's a separate sort of pipeline, separate algorithm which just handles that. It just retrieves information. There's no AI here, right? You can just retrieve data if you really want on its own. AI only comes in is when you are synthesizing the retrieved information with the original question. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Go for it.
Hi, thank you. That was really interesting. We actually experimented with both RAG and just using some of the LLMs directly. My question about RAG is, and this is my experience as well, is talking about how important the segmentation and chunking is. If you're trying to retrieve a really complicated information. Let's say you're trying to get a really scientific information, a number that depends on multiple if conditions that spread out through the document. So the moment you get into those use cases, the chunking becomes a really it becomes a thing of something that you really have to think about. And then also when you are doing the cosine similarity at the augmentation stage, then you also need to think about what sort of cosine similarity are you looking at and how are you augmenting the query. So I think at some point of time, we just realized it's just better to feed the PDF directly to AI instead of we pre-processing it, because at some point of time, like by the time we're building the system, the AI become powerful itself enough that you can chunk multiple AI LLMs to like get rid of all of this, chunk multiple LLMs and just get an answer. So my question is that what is your experience on like, is there a sweet spot? Because the more RAG systems that we're building, there are more things that you have to maintain. That comes with a cost. There's also a cost of the vector database. It's from my experience, it's quite costly. Like it's at the similar level costly at context window. So is there a trade-off?
So if it's big enough, the cost benefits are there. If you have hundreds of documents, we don't have hundreds, but we have like in a couple of hundred sort of area. The cost benefit is there, right? Because you don't have to pick the most expensive vector database. So I'll go from the end to start of your question. So I think the cost is there. I think for us, it's the reliability, right? Because by building the whole sort of process pipeline thing, you're also breaking down into evaluation stages, right? And they're not. It's not just as simple as going, is the answer relevant, right? It's also about, has the information that was retrieved accurate? Is it faithful? Is it grounded? So are we actually retrieving the information from there? So when we want to make when you let an AI produce information, you want to be 98, 99% sure. So that's the last part of the question. What was the first part of the question?
Yeah, I think it's just like I just wanted you to speak about the trade-off of like when RAG is relevant versus when I can just feed out to multiple LLMs and get an answer.
Yeah, I'll stick with cost and reliability. That's what it is for us. Without it, you are just hoping that AI will give you the right answer, or that it's a believable answer. Because without it, hallucinations are undetectable, essentially. Because you can evaluate AI outputs sort of as a groundedness, sort of, is the AI answer relevant? And then you need to fact check it as well. Or you fact check it against the piece of data that it was retrieved, if that makes sense. Without it, you don't have a ground truth data set. So you're just letting another AI model evaluate it. But with that, you also get the actual information. That's my opinion. you know, it could be that in a couple of years the whole thing is redundant. There's actually no need for this. But this is the sort of the baseline, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before we continue in the room, Cameron, are there questions from the remote audience? Oh, just checking.
Bad.
Keep at it, remote audience. Keep at it. Question here from Fiona.
How could I learn more about chunking approaches? Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually completely forgot to put that in. But if anyone used NotebookLM, it's what I sell to everyone I know. It's the most accessible way of using RAG without having to delve into anything technical, right? So NotebookLM is great. You basically feed all the YouTube links, PDF files, websites, anything you want into it. And when it answers, it'll provide you the references to where it came from. It also does like sort of audio podcasts, summaries. You can ask it questions. Technically, if you feed everything into ChatGPT as well, it will do it, but not as well, I think, because it doesn't provide you references. And to answer your original question about chunking, there's books.
Yeah.
Very long,
any good
dry, boring
resources.
books.
Yeah.
But there's also YouTube videos, which are great. Yeah, chunking strategies, basically. It is a bit of like experimentation that you have to go through. Because if it's PDFs, for example, do you want to do each paragraph in a PDF? Or do you just want to lop the whole thing in? For example, we just do page by page, because when we retrieve it as the final answer, the evidence that we provide will be a page number. That's how we do it. But it all revolves around the business logic that you're trying to get at. What's the problem that you're solving? But yeah, online resources, plenty of it. I post on LinkedIn sometimes. Might be something there.
Thank you.
And we're back to Keith.
With this chunking problem, is there relevance to multi-chunking, i.e. doing a page-by-page chunking and a paragraph, a sentence-by-sentence chunking? So you've got that overlaps and the different context windows to, I mean, obviously your vector database is going to get bigger, which is going to make your searches more CPU intensive, etc. But is that a valid thing to think about doing, or a silly idea?
So what's the valid thing? Choosing between one or the other, or
mixing them? Double processing your input data.
The sort of hybrid retrieval is what combines it. Actually, very good point. The talk I saw at the Data Science Festival, the guy at JLR, he was combining dense and sparse embeddings, right? And without going into too much detail, it's two different types of representing words through numbers, and by combining them, you cover each other's weaknesses. Yeah, so you cover sparse covers dense's weaknesses, and dense covers sparse. And then if you also combine it with something like BM25, which allows you to match for exact words, keyword search is that essentially like Control F sort of stuff. That lets you cover all the areas, right? So even if something is not semantically similar, you can still cover it. So yeah, it does make sense to experiment. That's how you really drive these sort of improvements. It's lots and lots of tweaking, experimentation. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your great questions, and thank you, Thomas, for fielding them so well. And with that, let's give Thomas another hand in gratitude. Thank you. You guys have been sitting very patiently for 1 hour and 20 minutes. Does anybody want a 5-minute beer break? The drinks are over here. Sorry, remote audience, we're going to take 5. Let's sit down. I didn't mean to dissolve everything into chaos, but I saw you guys were thirsty, and thank you so much. And now let's take our seats again. Take our seats because we're not done. We're not done. This was just a little break. And so if we could have our audience back in seats, thank you. Then we'll have our next talk, which is the forum's own Nigel, who is our resident expert on everything education. And he's going to tell us, well, what the hell are they teaching our kids? Come up and take the mic.
Right, thank you, Oskar. And what a dreadful photo. It looks like something Shardcore would have produced. Right, so the ubiquitous first slide, who the hell am I? Oh, who the hell am I to talk about what the hell are they teaching our kids? So I'm a computer science graduate in the last century. I've been teaching for 20 years. No, I keep using the wrong tense. I taught for 30 years. I escaped last year, reached the giddy heights of head of maths and head of computer science, and now happily, it feels like semi-retired. I do a bit of tutoring, and next week after the GCSEs finish, I'll be chained to my PC marking, and then in the autumn, I'll be chained to my PC reviewing other people's marking. And I've been coming to the data forum long enough to call myself an enthusiast. So, what does the 16 to 18 curriculum offer in terms of data? Obvious starting point, A-level statistics. It's been around forever. It's probably not changed much. It's probably not much of an exaggeration. It's very academic, not necessarily a bad thing. A-levels were designed to prepare young people for undergraduate study, and they do a very good job. They're gold standard. They've been around so long, no politician dares to change them. They're very good at that. They're still 100% exam-based. And there's 3 papers. So let's have a quick look how much data there is. Data and probability, some good stuff there. Inference, practice, interesting word. Depends what you mean by practice. There's nothing practical going on. It's very academic and textbook examples. If you mean it in terms of rehearsal for the real world, then yes, statistics in practice. So let's dig a little bit deeper, see what topics are covered. I won't read through them all. Obviously, probability distributions are a large part of that. And then there's some good stuff there. Very academic and really good preparation for university, but not practical. So I hope you've all got your pens. I'll pass the papers out in a moment. No talking, especially you at the back. I know what sort of people hide at the back. So where else might there be some data in the curriculum? A-level computer science. I haven't taught it for several years. I don't know whether if you've not got kids, you might not know. Most of the schools locally are 11 to 16. So for the likes of me, A-level is a rare treat. But there is data in computer science. Paper 1 is the more theoretical side of it. And we've got exchanging data. I imagine that's communication, but certainly not getting your hands dirty with APIs. And then data types, data structures, and the algorithms certainly do include some sorting algorithms. At GCSE, up to 16, kids learn about bubble sort, insert sort, and merge sort. And I don't know which other ones they have to do at A-level, but there'll be half a dozen different sorting algorithms. They have to be able to explain and evaluate how efficient they are, what they're suitable for, that kind of thing. And then last but not least, although lots of students would say least, why do we have to study ethics? We're going to have to write essays about that then. My answer is always one word, Robocop. Can you imagine ChatGPT running a Robocop? So that's a theory. Algorithms and programming is the other half of the exam. The algorithms will include, as I say, searching and sorting algorithms, but there's not much explicit data in there. And unlike A-level statistics, there is a project. 20% of your A-level is a start. So depending on what the student chooses, there may or may not be any data involved. That's A-level computer science. Quick honourable mention for A-level further maths. Very, very brief, one slide, because actually very few schools teach it. Certainly very few state schools teach it, I suspect because they can't get the staff. I certainly wouldn't be able to teach those topics without a lot of preparation. So A-level further maths is like A-level maths, but harder. So you've got pure maths, all the algebra, integration, whatever, mechanics if you're going to be an engineer, and then there's some more statistics, which is more of the same but harder. And then there's another option, decision maths. Originally it was called discrete maths, and yeah, Andrew's looking like, what a funny name. I imagine someone decided decision maths sounds much more positive than discrete. So come out, mathematicians, flaunt yourselves. It's basically maths for computer scientists. And don't ask me to explain any of that. I've never taught it. And it wasn't around in the 80s when I did A-level maths. But there is some good stuff in there that's useful. Again, very academic. Now, what I really wanted to tell you about is a brand new course, AAQ, which may or may not mean anything to you, in data analytics, a new post-16 course, also known as, take a deep breath, Level 3 Alternative Advanced Qualification, Cambridge Advanced National Certificate in IT Data Analytics. Can you imagine a 16-year-old on the first day of sixth form making friends, telling them what, oh, I'm doing Latin. What are you doing? So it's brand new, launching this September, and the exam board, my exam board, Cambridge, are promising practical skills. So very much positioning it alongside A-levels. They're hoping to get the best of both worlds. So it's available quite flexibly. There's the standard certificate, the single certificate equivalent to one A-level. So if you want, you could do a single certificate in data analytics alongside A-level computer science, alongside A-level maths maybe, and if you've got time, maybe a level 1 in caring for small animals or whatever. Or you could geek out for 2 years full-time on data and do the extended certificate. That's equivalent to 3 A-levels, so a full-time course. We'll just dig a little bit deeper. So, oh, oops, that's not, anyway, the single certificate, there are 2 core modules, fundamentals of data analytics and spreadsheet data modeling. This looks like one of those awkward Mac thingies. If I press escape, will we see the edit version? I don't know what else is on the right hand side.
Okay, so I messed up your slide somehow.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. The important thing is, let's go back to the presentation. Doesn't matter.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, the important thing is the first 2 modules are core to the extended certificate as well. And then the third core third core module is big data and machine learning. So machine learning has come a long way. It's come down in the world. 10 years ago, it was a PhD research topic, and then there were a few master's courses. 3 or 4 years ago, a couple of my son's friends started doing undergrad courses in data science with a bit of machine learning, and now we're teaching it to 16-year-olds. Where will it end? Well, actually, there's an organization called Computing at Schools, provides free resources for 11 to 16 education, and I've had kids classifying images like cat, dog, and they'll quite happily sit there for half an hour classifying, just like we do with capture. So the idea of AI and machine learning, it's coming down because it's so important. It's everywhere. And I can't remember what the other ones are. The databases, obviously, and ask me in the pub later, I'll Google it. So just wrapping up, the new qualification, data analytics, personal opinion, will it change the world? Well, yes, I think it's got a very good chance of encouraging more students to take various data subjects at university, and more importantly, to prepare them for work or apprenticeships. And I'm glad I didn't have this on my slide. Apparently, degree level apprenticeships are no more for old people, like over 22 or something, but that's hot off the press yesterday. And as far as I can see, a couple of challenges. Well, it's like anything new in education. When computer science came out, who's going to teach it? Michael Gove, bless him, introduced compulsory computer science up to 14, and then a proper computer science GCSE. And then for the next few years, there were no teachers. So maths teachers like me with a degree in computer science, I thought, oh yeah, I'll spend a few hours learning a bit of Python, then I can pass myself off as a computer science teacher. But there are loads of schools still without a proper computer science teacher. And I can imagine the first year or two, not many colleges or schools will offer this qualification because the teachers and lecturers haven't got the skills themselves. So there'll be a few years of upskilling. And the other interesting balancing act I can see they're trying to play, it's an A-level equivalent. So in theory, they're trying to appeal to universities. They're trying to get admissions officers to consider it on a par with A-level statistics, computer science, whatever. And at the same time, they're trying to position it as a much more practical subject. So there's, yes, I knew I'd forgotten something. I finished the slides at 5 o'clock. The AAQ is 50-50, I think, exams and coursework. So there will be real life messy data to deal with. The idea is it will prepare young people for real data. Yeah, so hopefully exciting times. And don't ask me anything about A-level maths.
Thank you very much for that, Nigel. Before I continue, any questions from our remote audience? Not yet. They're thinking about it. And they're going to start typing. We're going to go into the in the room. Now, first of all, apologies, Nigel, for messing up your slides. In my defense, they arrived 5 minutes ahead of him, so you know, not much time for testing. Right, question over here.
Nigel, great presentation. I probably have half an hour of questions, but I'm going to ask them at the pub. I'm just going to ask a couple now. First one, you didn't mention BTEC. Is that still a thing, the BTEC in IT?
Yes, BTECs are kind of the opposite of A-level. The new AAQ, good question. It's all about positioning and marketing. A-levels are the academic route for students likely to aim for university. BTEC has always been a lot more practical for students who are planning to escape from academia and get a job as soon as they can. As far as I'm aware, the BTECs are still going at level 3, the A-level equivalent.
I remember when I was in my last academic job, I would say probably 90% of our intake were students with BTECs. And
wow.
We'll talk about that at the pub. The backup question is, especially when I was, the second question is, especially when you were going through the last slides, I got a bit anxious. I have my personal opinions, but I'm going to ask you your opinion. What do you think about subjects so practical for somebody that is 14? Because, yeah, what's your opinion? Does it make sense, the question?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't.
I'm thinking that somebody should be learning maths and English and foreign languages rather than doing this stuff. But that's probably my opinion. Although I work in data, as you know.
Yeah. Some kids, when they get to 14, it's obvious they're not university inclined. There's a lot of practical subjects which are a lot better for them. They're more engaging, more practical, and do a better job of preparing them for starting work when they're 16. I hope. You look suspicious.
I don't think that anybody should work when you're 16.
In an ideal world, it would be lovely if everyone, if the education system gave everyone a love of learning and they stuck it out till at least 18, that would be wonderful. Realistically, some kids just can't wait to leave, which may be down to the structure of the education system, sometimes personal issues. Yeah, it's a reality. Some kids just don't want to carry on learning. They can't wait to contribute to the world, shall we say.
Have you got any feel for how popular the new, more advanced subject would be with the kids? I mean, are there gender differences as well in terms of popularity?
Yeah. Tech subjects, maths, have always suffered from gender imbalance. There are initiatives going on and they never solve it. It's a society-wide problem. Education should be doing more. We should be leading on it, but we're battling against societal expectations. So in my defense, there's limited things we can do. But yes, I would expect, even as a more practical subject, it will appeal more to boys. It's a bit of an unknown at the moment. We don't teach much data. There's not much data in the GCSE, so there'll be a big sales job for teachers to do to promote it. If they're putting in probably 100 hours plus of training, their own personal development, they're going to be invested in trying to get people onto the course. But yeah, to start with, it will be like any new course. It's a bit of an unknown. So it'll be a few years before word gets round that, oh, Jimmy did it 3 years ago, and he's earning a fortune.
Very interesting topic. I'm very curious about what sort of ethics are being taught, because on the one hand we have ChatGPT, not illegally, somehow questionably downloading all the data and just ignoring all the copyrights, and policymakers are not catching up with ethical dilemmas of whatever is happening in the data world. Versus, I'll be very interested to know what exactly, when people talk about ethics at this level, what are they teaching?
Well, it's a brand new qualification, so I would like to think the ethics will be fairly up to date. This qualification's probably been many years in the pipeline in development, but A-levels will take, there's probably a 10-year cycle before they review the curriculum, so there's no chance of any ethics, any AI ethics coming into A-level statistics, just because of the nature of the cycle. At GCSE, which I am more familiar with because I've only just skimmed through the syllabus. At GCSE, there is always an essay question, and the kids hate it, on discuss, that's an essay. Discuss the ethical, moral, social, cultural, environmental, legal impacts of, and then a scenario. And it's always a really, really badly answered question. The mark scheme is really formulaic. I don't know why schools don't just teach, draw a grid, make sure you tick every section of the grid. But it's very, very badly answered.
Hi there. I'm a education student. I'm doing a honours at Brighton. And funnily enough, my last sort of essay assignment that I'm doing it on is about digital technology and AI in the classrooms. I'm looking at it as more of a primary, with a primary school lens. But I was just interested, as I was doing research for the topic, one, has this come about, if you're aware, because of the education strategy that was taking place in 2025? I had another question, but it's gone from my head. But that would be, has it come from government policy, or has the government given any funding towards this, if you're aware?
I'm not aware of funding. New initiatives like this take a long incubation period. Way back in the 90s, the Royal Statistical Society were calling for more statistics in education, and it took years and years to get a GCSE launched in GCSE statistics, which is actually just the statistics in GCSE maths, but with harder questions. So it's a bit of a cop-out. I would imagine there'll be an element of government strategy, but governments change, and because of the incubation time, I would imagine it's just some individual in the exam board made it their mission. So I'm a bit skeptical about high level strategy.
And in terms of education technology and that being implemented, it's really interesting to see how it's now taking a huge shift within primary schools. But have you seen, I know you've just retired recently, but have you seen any uptake in that, or any real improvements that students were benefiting from it?
Education technology, or education about technology?
Education technology.
Funding is the issue there. So many schools have got leaky roofs, and it's just difficult to prioritize investing in technology for a lot of schools. New builds, you've probably got a better chance. There's a lot of schools out there with 20-year-old whiteboards, or actually I shouldn't say just schools. I did a workshop at the university a few weeks ago. They still have chalkboards. I was quite excited.
And one last question from Nigel.
From one Nigel to another. I was just wondering what feel you had for how much data features in other subjects outside sort of maths and technology. You know, there's some obvious ones like, you know, geography, psychology, but actually data is so important to us, you know, in our daily lives that arguably it applies across the spectrum of subjects.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't have time to research it, but yes, arguably any subject could use data. Traditionally, ICT teachers 30 years ago came from sort of science teaching background, or you do geography, you do bar charts, you can teach ICT. So yeah, it's anybody's guess, but there'll be a lot of geography teachers or whatever teachers who probably without much official training and development just develop their own data skills. Yeah, again, big need for strategy, but nobody to fund it or drive it.
Yeah, it's just an interesting question, I guess, and I don't know the answers. I'm not informed, but maybe we can chat in the pub after.
Yes, indeed, we can. So thank you all for keeping the conversation going. Thank you all for the questions, and thank you, Nigel, for your talk and for indulging the questions. I mean, I like your title. I mean, what the hell are they teaching our kids? I mean, 5 minutes ago, that was you. So, I'm going to tell you really briefly. Just imagine you sent my talk over to ChatGPT and asked it to summarize. I went to a data science festival in London. It was fun. I met some people from the Brighton Data Forum. I looked at the schedule, and it was full of artificial intelligence. And the rest was largely analytics or advanced analytics. There was a couple of data career talks, more on that later. But actual data science at this data science festival was in the minority. And it reflects about something that I've been thinking for a while, that data science as a role has been squeezed from two directions. On one hand, you have the data engineering, the advanced analytics, the business intelligence growing in capability and in autonomy, squeezing into data science territory. And on the other hand, you have AI and AI engineering, agentic tool chains, and these automated builders, these Make.com, N8, and Zerv, claiming their space. And so that's narrowing what data science is left. And even though the value of classification and regression models remains just as before, data science commands much less of an organization's senior leadership's attention, funding, promotion. As a side note, we are seeing platforms. So tech goes in cycles. You know, you get these times when you have a monolith and somebody breaks that up and you have all these modular, called the modern data stacks. We take this tool, and they are interoperable, and you can piece them together in any which way you'd like. And then all these pieces get too complicated, and somebody builds, I know, let's have unify them all into a platform. AWS is doing this, Microsoft is doing this with Fabric. In the case of AWS, they're building in Amazon SageMaker the unified studio. Basically, it's a lake house. So what used to be SageMaker, the IDE for data scientists, is now a platform for anything from governance to pipeline, to analytics, to data science, to business intelligence, and to agentic AI tooling. At the conference, I saw I met with the people from Zerv, which are doing this for building these data workflow platforms as well. Point being that the same data professional or a team of professionals are working in SageMaker, Unified Studio, or in these platforms, doing anything from governance to business intelligence to analytical modeling. So some of you here are old enough to recall when data science was called the sexiest job of the 21st century. That didn't last a decade. That it was we're hurtling down the slope of the hype cycle, and it sounds so embarrassingly quaint, this phrase. So I felt a little bit. Tivadar Danka released his book on YouTube today. After 4 to 5 years of gestation, this book came out. I mean, he had his launch on YouTube today. And the book looks amazing. It's crafted. It's very meticulously crafted. It's got great graphics, and it's precisely what I would have wanted early in my data science career. And for the enthusiast, I heartily recommend this book out without having read it. It looks fantastic. But the author missed his window by about 3 years. The audience is so much smaller. You have dime a dozen chatbots capable of tutoring any beginner in very capably in data science and data science techniques. You have all these pre-trained models available at your fingertips, from AWS, from any of the cloud servers, AutoML. You don't need to understand the combustion engine to drive a car. You won't need to understand all of this to build models. So what does that leave us? Where does that leave us? So what does the budding data scientist do? This is not a negative message. It sounds negative. If you're interested in data science, there's good news here. And the good news is that you are being superpowered so long as you broaden. And I went to this data science festival just thinking, oh, data science, I'll go to data science talks. And I didn't go to the data science talk. But I did go to this talk because this guy had the answers. He had the answers I was looking for. The answer is we take charge. We lead. That's what we'll do. So his name is Sachar Mayer, and he's an experienced data leader. He was at PayPal and Meta and WorldRemit. And the best talk of the day was when he spoke, put into succinct words, what we all probably in data science have been feeling for a while, if not articulated. So I'm going to butcher it by summarizing it, but the takeaway is that data professionals have a tendency to be detail-oriented and focus on technology, relying on their skills with technologies to solve problems. In comes problems, bang on with some technology, out comes a solution, and you get a gold star, and you feel happy for a little bit. Another problem, technology, solution. We take orders from stakeholders, we produce tailor-made data products to exacting requirements. And so what's the problem with that? We're missing or ignoring the big picture. And so we become at risk of being blinded. Oh, sorry about that. That's what Sachar calls pleasers. We become pleasers. And the problem with pleasers is that you cannot expect your stakeholders, who are subject matter experts in their own fields, to know what is possible, what is proper, and what is principled to do on the data platform and with the organization's data. The pleaser will build 200 dashboards, and he will fit 200 models with 200 features, taking every requested feature into account. But what a pleaser will not do is truly help his organization manage the complexity that's being generated by this. So instead, as data professionals, we must push back and engage with stakeholders, not merely as service providers, but as experts in our own right. Data professionals, we have to learn and know enough about the organization's functions to understand their work, their output, and their needs, as opposed to their requirements. Separate those two. And you have to translate these needs into data project. You have to help them develop a taxonomy and metrics and simplify these to get agreement on organizational level, so that you can use 10 dashboards, not 200. So that you can use 3 models that actually move the business forward. You must maintain focus, not on the details, but on the outcomes. Now, for reasons of rhyme alone, he calls the antidote to pleasers the teasers, and I'm not 100% on board with that. But what it means is, do not stay in your lane. To a data professional, there is no irrelevant function in the organization. As a data professional, you have to work across divisions and reach through departmental barriers to understand the business itself as well or better than any individual stakeholder. So, in order to be maximally useful to your organization, data professionals must lead in their role. That's a very condensed summary of a very good talk. There's more to this, but Satya has a free email course called Unblock Your Career that has all the details, and I do recommend it. He has a blog, he has a YouTube channel, he has writings scattered about. So do give it a look if you are so inclined. I do recommend it. And finally, at the festival, I learned that the organizers, the Data Idols, planning a free-to-attend data science job fair event in London mid-September this year. So if you're in search of a role or considering a move, I recommend going and talking to them. And that's it. I will be taking questions at the bar. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much. And take good care. See you at Unbarred.